Hello, and welcome to Waterstones online events. I'm here to discuss with the fabulous Ruby Wax her new book, and now for the good news to the future with love. And it's an absolutely... Am I actually on? I don't think I'm on. Am I on? Okay, all right, sorry, then I'll say it again. Right, and now for the good news, to the future with love, which is by the brilliant Ruby Wax, and it's filled with love, and it's filled with actionable tips, which I have to say, unlike some self-help books, feel completely and utterly possible and doable. But it will inspire you to look at the world with a sense of renewed optimism. So without further ado, let us welcome Dame Ruby Wax. Here she is.
Is that me?
Now look,
am I on?
Yeah, are you on? Are you on? Now, Ruby, just so you know, I have got this little applause box. So at any point, if you feel you need applause, just say, Emma, press the button, okay?
You mean if the ego?
I know.
Okay.
Now, right. I absolutely loved your book, and it made me feel giddy with happiness at a time when it feels like there is no happiness to be found. And I suppose my first question to you is, how did you find it within yourself to write a book that is about good news when the world feels as if it's gone to hell in a handcart?
I wrote this 2 years. I started 2 years ago. The day I finished was the day the pandemic started, so that was good timing. Yeah. I believe that wherever you point your attention kind of defines who you are. I mean, that's biologically true. If you keep looking, if you feel like a victim, you will always look for somebody that verifies that, because it's better the devil you know. So I thought, Ruby, take your focus and let's put it on the people who are inventing a new paradigm, and let's just meet them. I didn't know that they were out there, but I know how to research. So so I went and I covered education, business, community, health, and tech. And in each group, I wanted to see who's changing it. And I call them the green shoots. And so I did for 2 years. And I have to tell you, I could come off the antidepressants. It really made me happy.
Changed by it? Do you feel changed?
Well, look, now I'm going back to being like jittery and buying things on Amazon that don't make sense.
Yeah.
But for 2 years, I got the muscles, where it became like a thrill to meet these people and to hear their brains ticking away and not rolling your eyes and going, yeah, but. Well, they knocked the yeah, but out of the system, because we're talking about how tech is it's helping humanity rather than sucking it dry. It's education, where even in the UK, they're teaching kids, and this in some disadvantaged neighborhoods, and these are state schools, they're teaching kids empathy and how to hear each other's point of view without getting offended by it, and to lower their own stress things, and just teaching in a different way, like, so them telling the kids, there is no stupid question. Now, why didn't I get that?
Yeah, exactly.
Those kids are going to think out of the box and not be ashamed that they didn't fit into that cookie cutter, which I never did in high school.
I got a real sense of that, actually, of your joy. And it was almost childlike, of like, it was like you were opening up a Christmas box, and it's like, wow, all these things are here. But something that you say in the book, and I'm quite interested to dig into this, is that you say that you've turned your back on politics. And I suppose I was interested in that because even though the book isn't sort of, waving a flag for any political party, what you are talking about really is deeply political. So I wonder if you could sort of dig into that a bit.
My area isn't politics.
But everything that you're advocating is political, really.
I know, but I think it's my belief is it isn't just sending arrows to whoever's in charge. even though I'm tempted and everybody else feel part of, we feel all warm and cozy when we have a target. By the way, I think attacking a certain person is going to put him back in office.
Yeah.
Because, humans love to get angry, that adrenaline, and that anger is really addictive. So, nobody's addicted to kale. We're just really addicted to the bad news.
Talk for yourself. It's interesting you say that about anger and fury, because it feels often now that that's where we are as a human race, is that everyone is just running on anger, and it's so depressing, for want of a better word. And your book is sort of, you're of the view that we've got to drastically change, you call it our navigation systems, and sort of rejig them to a more positive destination. And it's interesting that we've now had this pandemic, because I think pre-COVID I might have read that and thought, well, that's a lovely idea of maybe like someone who's come through the 60s and 70s and thinks that there's this lovely paradise that's just over there for the grabbing. But now, having gone through lockdown and how everybody is suddenly reassessing their lives, what you're advocating feels possible. But I suppose what we need to do, or how you think, is how we shift the decades and centuries of entrenched thinking that there is only one way of doing things.
I wrote a book about this too. Nobody's complaining about stress. Humans, it comes with the package, or anxiety. People suffered, sadness before, but a phenomena of this age is that we're getting, it's called frazzled, and it is really a neurobiological word. It means stressed about stress. So this is the first generation that give themselves a constant critique of that they're not fitting in, that they're not good enough, that they feel like a failure. It's really, and the last book, How to Be Human, was about that. It's not our fault. Things worked really well back hundreds of thousands of years ago, but now they're backfiring because part of our brain is still very primitive and it doesn't realize the wallpaper's changed. So when you're competing with half the world on social media, we don't have the bandwidth. You think, pretty girls are competing with Russian hookers who make 2,000 pounds an hour. Of course, they're going to have low self-esteem. We aren't supposed to have this much choice. We aren't supposed to feel this kind of envy. All these little feelings were really good when we were back in time. Nothing, and even shame was a valuable emotion. But now, oh my God, we're so isolated that we don't compare notes. And when you're with community, you could say, I feel this, I feel this. But that's the way it used to work. When we sat around the fire, or, when people had families or religions, you could speak from the heart. And part of it is we're really clogged with shame. Nobody wants to admit vulnerability. And that's why I'm advocating a lot of community is the answer in every single field.
Yeah, you talk a lot about loneliness in the book, and how it's sort of a modern phenomenon, and it seems weird, because it is, how have we become so disbanded and disjointed and isolated at a time when we've got the internet, the social media, and it feels like we're the most connected we've ever been, and yet we're not. What has gone wrong?
I can't be specific because that's a much more knowledgeable area than I can only guess. I can only surmise from what I observe when I speak to kind of communities, which I do on Frazzle Cafe. I get all, young.
Tell people about Frazzle Cafe if people don't know about Frazzle Cafe.
Every night, or I now do it 3 times a week at 5:30. If you go on frazzlecafe.org, I run a kind of talk-in. It's not therapy. It's where people speak human to human. And we have young, old, every color. And it really breaks down the them and us feeling. Because our heart, we're human. So you even have people saying, oh, this is the first time I've had the nerve to open my mouth because I don't think I exist. But now you see the whites of people's eyes going, listening and caring. And I'll tell you something. It's like when we all went out and clapped with our pats and pans. You can feel the love whooshing down the street. If you think that's political, then it's political. But I just don't want to point it's enough about the tea guy. It's enough about, somebody else can make fun of that. My real belief is it starts with the individual. If you feel compassion, which it's not that difficult, if we start to A, lower the fear, and B, start to recognize that we're not going to survive without the team. And compassion is also a virus. I notice that when I do frazzle this, if I care, the next guy does, and it has a ripple effect. It's like, I love that. It's like neural Wi-Fi. It's catching. And so when I did, the book isn't a kind of book about hugging your inner elf. What I did do is I went to businesses, smelling yourself and feeling good about it.
I wanted to find my inner elf immediately as soon as I'd finished it. But actually, on compassion, that it's really interesting because you're really advocating that compassion and empathy are basically the things that are going to save us. And I wondered what you thought about the fact that we are currently living through a horrible patch, I think, where the terms woke and virtual signaling have now become really sort of demeaning insults. And we now seem to be living in an age where having compassion and empathy is something to be sneered at. How has that happened, Ruby?
No, it always was something to be sneered at. As a matter of fact, when I went to university, and I was studying psychology, I could never say the C word, compassion. Yeah. I couldn't say it because it was too gooey and too Hallmark card, where you send two puppies and say, I love you. I just couldn't say it. But after doing this book and seeing how it works, and I'm talking big business and where it's called conscious capitalism, I went to the companies where they're restructuring and they're putting purpose in front of profit. And don't think these are small companies. I mean, Unilever is doing some amazing stuff where they put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah.
Now, everybody will roll their eyes and go, oh, yeah, it's just, greenwashing and whatever. But at least I give you the facts. At least I show you what they're doing in Finland, which is also being done in the UK, that communities, without us realizing it, because it's not interesting in the newspaper, are happening in the UK. Not that you have to move into one, but you can take some of their ideas and use it in your life. I'm giving you tools that other people use. I'm not making them up. There is, just for community, there is a place in London, in South London called Bedzed, where they really have an eco community and it's free housing. Yeah. So, people go, oh, you need money. It's zero heating bills. They live, the way the buildings are structured, they're kind of facing each other. So there's cobblestone streets between the buildings so kids can play down there and the parents can just look down, and those kids are safe. Community centers where mothers can, hand each other their babies and then go off to work. Elderly people who are learning Zumba and how to work a computer. Everybody cares about everybody. They have that meeting center, which we used to have. I always think Quakers had it so good.
Yeah.
And there's gardens over their houses. I mean, it's sensational.
When I lived in London, I lived there for 30 years and I didn't know any of my neighbours. I knew the first name of one neighbour, that was it. And then I moved to the countryside. I moved into this little village and moved into a cul-de-sac. And now I know every single person's name. And it is amazing just the change that brings about in you and how you behave once you feel part of a community. Yeah. It's quite extraordinary. By the way, I should say to everyone watching, if you have email questions, then please send them into the Q&R or the chat, and we will get to your questions at probably about 8:10. We shall get to those. Now, I wanted to
envy you. I really envy you. And I know now in little towns, especially after the pandemic, I know those town halls now because I know where I'm talking about, near where I have a little house where I do writing, Buntingford and Bulldog. They now meet in the town hall, which used to be empty, and they plan little days of picking the garbage up or knocking on people's doors. And there's a kind of thrill in the air. And this, I think, came out of the pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, it was amazing. In our village, we initiated a response team immediately, and went and put a little note through every single letterbox in the village saying, if you're old or if you've got an illness and you can't get out, then let us know and we'll do your shopping for you. And it just ran like clockwork. Just there were like 5 of us, and then we had 300 volunteers in the village, and it just felt amazing.
Yeah. You get high on
feeling.
Yeah, I mean, to do something nice, I didn't realize is quite addictive. Because you go, it's selfish, because you get this buzz of this hormone.
Yeah.
We are run by hormones that you could not care less about the other person, but you feel really good and self-righteous. What's wrong with that?
Yeah. Now, in your book,
it's kind of selfish.
In your book, you tell some quite sad stories about your childhood, because you're an only child. I was also an only child, so I completely identified with a lot of what you were saying. And there was one passage in it which really, really resonated with me. And it was the one where you told the story about going to the summer camp. And I will let you tell the story, but there was one line in it that it was like being hit round the head with a realism bat. And it was when you said, ever since I've been looking for a replacement for the blue team. And it kind of that when you read that part, I'll let you tell the story, but when you read that bit, it's something like the whole book just fell into place for me with that. But please tell the story.
Was it in the chapter about community?
Yes.
Well, maybe it came out of, I didn't have a neighborhood, and my parents were out to lunch. So I always used to sit in the window with my dog. We had a picture window, and watch people in the park with their families having coleslaw. And I would yearn to be, maybe they were having a terrible time, but whenever I see a cluster of people, it breaks my heart, because I've never felt part of a group.
Well, especially now we've got to report them. That's quite sad. Yeah, more than 6 people. I'm afraid we have to.
Well, in the old days, you could have whole families.
Well, but anyway, carry on.
Yeah, I know it's kind of down memory lane thing. But then my parents sent me to summer camp. I think and we had color teams, which helps you learn, early discrimination at a really young age. So I was a blue, and there were whites, and you would get into a frenzy. I mean, I cared more about the blue team than I did if we won the war in Vietnam. Yeah. So you get that commitment, and the pride and the love I had for, my canoe team. And it was the first time I felt, that kind of swamping of love. And when I was dragged from camp, that was the last time I felt it. And I had my fingernails engraved in the totem pole as my parents dragged me out. And then it was pretty lonely for about the next
Really, you should have gone into the army, really, shouldn't you, Ruby? I mean, I think you would have done very well there. You would have done very well. Either the army or be an Olympian, being an 8, being a
Either one, I'm lacking a skill, okay? Just a small skill, yeah. But, or a singing group, or I really do, I love the idea of people sitting in a circle and just passing the talking stick. I love it, but it doesn't happen in my life. And then when I got successful, I had to create this kind of bullshit exterior, and you get even more lonely. I mean, I connect with a few people, and then you grow into the mask, and now you don't know who you're supposed to talk to. But gradually, I find people that, after the pandemic especially, I know now who I like and who I don't like, because there's been such a pause, because I'm so eager to make certain people like me, and I don't even like them.
Yes.
But anyway, I mean, that's what the book's about, but I was around people that were excited about what they were creating. And it's not, they're not creating little arts and crafts. They're creating, technology that is retraining kids through gaming. They're training kids through gaming, the very things that we used to go, oh my God, it's tearing us apart. They're teaching these kids empathy by there's one game where the kids, and it's just as exciting as the other games. Their rocket crashes on a planet and they meet the aliens, and they only can communicate by watching their eyes and faces. So the kids start to learn mentalization. What are they thinking? And gradually they get a relationship, and the alien helps them build the thing. But they have to understand what this person is trying to say by their, by their facial expressions. Also, they can still kill them, but they get more points. If they think, why does he feel so sad? And then, the kid figures it out. But there are games that are, and therapies now that do work online. I mean, look at what's happening here.
Yeah.
We can't be distracted because we're on the very thing that used to distract us.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? I love the section about Findhorn, which you brilliantly described. Findhorn, which you brilliantly described as the vegetable version of Woodstock. And what I loved about that was that you and I would have been exactly the same, is how resistant you were in the first instance, that when you first arrived there. And actually, I kind of think that this is a problem we all have to get past, is that I think that most people would have had the exact same reaction that you have had. But it's like, how do we get out of that mindset of, ooh, I don't like this?
Oh no, it was the fairies, the woman who first came there 58 years ago, heard God talking to her, but only in the loo. It was insane. But then you start to see that probably after 10 years, sort of incredible things did happen. Again, the vegetables grew on the sand dunes, but gigantic ones. So I know.
Did they explain that to you, how that had happened?
Well, now when you go, there's jungles of kale, there's forests. Clearly, well, there must be something in the soil, but what happened was scientists would come and see what was going on there. And so tech people started to arrive maybe 20 years later, and they've always been state of the art. They had solar paneling 20 years ago. They know how to, again, they do that eco thing where they know how to save energy. And there's the biggest group of startups are there than there are anywhere else in Europe. And it's really, again, they're really excited what they're doing. There's an organization called GEN, which is Global Eco Network.
I'm obsessed with GEN now. And if I was saying earlier that if I was a politician, the GEN Eco Villages is absolutely the thing that I would be pushing for, to explain to people what they are, because people may not know.
Well, it's an association. Their headquarters happens to be there, and there's a troop that understands sustainability and all those words that I never really understood. But when somebody applies to create an intentional community, that group, and there's 10,000 of them, by the way, right now. So I visited some, not 10,000, but they're in African villages, they're in favelas, they're in really sexy communities outside New York and in Norway and in Costa Rica, you can imagine. But the same group go there, they teach them, if let's say they're in a flood zone, they'll teach them how to, barricade the flood zone. And they help them turn it into a zero emissions. But you have to follow the rules, because the ethos has to be that when these people have meetings, they teach them conflict resolution. They teach them that, and they have to adhere to equality, transparency, and authenticity. If they don't, Jen pulls out. So imagine in these African villages where women were just, cleaning the mud. Suddenly now they have to be part of the group. Yeah. And the eco villages, there's one in Egypt that has 2,000 people, and they are, they have medical centers. And in the favela, this guy just taught kids how to play drums, whatever, tin drums, and then started to make money and bought everything, put turf on the top of his building, and everybody got curious. And then they called in Jen and they transformed it. But,
I love the story about the African village where all the men had left, and the women set up the Jen Eco Village. And then they all
were gone because they didn't want the babies crying. The women set up the eco village and really understood finance, like they knew how to screw the people selling
Yeah.
them vegetables.
Yeah.
And then the men came back. Yeah. With their
It's
tails.
all done. Yeah. Oh, quelle surprise. One of the bits or the sections in your book that not troubled me, it infuriated me, not from what you had written, but because of the state of where we are. And that was the section on business. And you talk about some horrible statistics that 1% of the world has the same amount of money as 99% of the world put together, and that 42 people hold the same amount of wealth as 3.7 billion people on the planet. And we have this incredible wealth inequality problem. And you highlight it, but I wonder if you have any ideas as to how we shift this.
Well, again, I don't understand politics. I don't know how the mechanism works. But when you do visit some of these places, so I did work in these businesses where, like Jen, they adhere to these very strict rules. There's fairness all the way through the business. Everybody, the team takes control rather than command and control from the top, because it goes much faster. In the companies I visited, they all had a kind of ecological mission, so
Yeah.
that it's bigger than the job. And when I went to the sportswear company in America, they built the schools were between the buildings,
Is
so
that
they could look
Patagonia?
out and see the kids.
Patagonia that you
Patagonia, the sportswear company,
yeah.
and even the building, I thought, I have to live here. I mean, it's so human, and they work for the locals, and they give away 10% of their money, and everything, it's 95% recyclable. I don't even believe I'm talking like this, but people yabber on about the ecology, and I say, well, get off the pot or shut up. So I can see companies that are doing it. They check the supply chain, that if whether those people get medical care and how many hours they work. And the reason this is interesting, I think the next generation are going to have apps where they can go in a shop and source, if somebody in Vietnam or whatever went blind from sewing the zipper into your trousers, or was the chicken a criminal, you will be able to see that, because that's tech.
I mean,
And then they say kids will have a thing, there already is a hashtag, this sucks and this doesn't. And that information will spread like wildfire.
you talk a lot about conscious capitalism in your book, and obviously you highlight the people who are doing it the best. But do you think it's going to catch on?
That's not my mission. My mission is, it's big companies. It's Ben and Jerry's. I make a list, Dannon, Elaine Fisher, the Guardian Media Group. If you look at it, there's a stamp called B Corp, and that's
explain what B Corp is. It's really interesting.
The guy who runs it, because I went to New York, happened to go to my high school, and I said, "Did we date?" Of course, he's 20 years younger than me, but I think I'm young. And it turned out, no, we didn't.
He wished he had.
He was one of those jocks. He was like the football hero, and I was the kind of girl that was smoking in the girls' toilet, trying to be in with a group again, but just ending up with the losers. I'm not saying feel sorry for me. I eventually got over it. And all those girls now, they're all on Valium drips, so it's okay. Anyway, he went to my high school, but he started something called B Corp, where companies come to them and they have to adhere again to these certain rules that they keep checking if the company is sticking with it. There's fairness. There's how much damage are you doing to the environment? Is the supply chain, kosher? It's fair. The payment is fair. And this I thought was interesting. I didn't know anything about business, but shareholders were allowed to sue companies that didn't make the right amount of profit. They changed the laws in every state in America that now they can't sue them, but if the company shows that they had a purpose and they accomplished something to better the world, they can't sue. So purpose has gone in front of profit. And now there's a waiting list to get a B Corp stamp. It's not small. And as I say, they're lining up to get that. And pretty soon the shopper's going to say, do you guys have a B Corp stamp? I'm shopping there. It has to happen.
Yeah, it is all about choice, isn't it? And about knowing that you can make an informed choice. And I feel like we are starting to see that people want to shop or give their money to ethical businesses. There's no doubt about that. So that
Well,
feels,
the younger one, because my generation trashed the earth. We used it as an ashtray. But I can already see my kids going, whoa, whoa. They have to, because there won't be, I don't want to give bad news, but, it won't work. It won't have a happy ending.
we're not doing any bad news
Yeah.
on this. You talk about education really brilliantly in your book, and again, this is one of those things where um, sort of my 1970 self sitting in a classroom, being taught in a way that is because that's how it's done, would have read your book and just gone, what is this? What are you talking about? How on earth can this possibly work? But we're doing it all wrong, aren't we, in schools?
Well, some schools, and I found the ones that, it's a small majority, but there's a reason why 1 in 3 kids have mental health problems. It didn't just happen because they sprinkled madness dust. They're making these fast food brains that are just as bad for you as fast food, for your stomach. It's that Ofsted and everybody's job's worth. So the teachers have to teach a certain curriculum. Then Ofsted, they compete against the rest of the world. Everybody's watching everybody's back to produce this kind of human that doesn't enhance anything. It just either they burn out or they become, what do I say, people that got the best grades, not always, but are brilliant in math, but they also know how to do algorithms. When you know how to rob the bank, why not use it? The
Yeah.
smartest people know how to screw you hardest. Sometimes, I'm not talking doctors and lawyers. I'm just saying when the kids, first of all, there's a lot of schools now that are teaching mindfulness, and that's not a gooey kind of thing anymore. I mean, I went to Oxford to learn about it. The neurological manifestations of learning this means that the kids control their stress. And, and then also they learn how to pay attention. Teachers used to say, pay attention, but that has to be taught. That doesn't mean anything. So in some of these schools, they see where the kid pays attention, what fascinates them, and the teacher looks. And then, encourages him, instead of barking and saying, move your focus this way. And gradually, through affection and through caring, starts to steer the kid toward areas he might have to, have to be tested on. But did I say this before? The jobs that will exist in 20 years for 8-year-olds, they don't exist now.
Well, I mean, I think that I think this is a big problem that is coming down the track. That it's not just about what jobs are our 8-year-olds going to be doing, and how is our education system preparing them for it. But it's, as you say in your section on technology, is the great big train that is coming down the track at 100 miles an hour. Is the fact that 47% of people aren't going to have any jobs anymore because here come the robots. And we're not even remotely prepared for that as a human race. What are we going to do?
Well, again, I mean, I do give a list of which jobs are going to be gone. There is bad news in here.
Yeah.
Okay, but
You do say accountants will, they're done. They're done. Accountants are done.
Yeah, so that answers the question why we're teaching kids certain qualities.
Yeah.
And they have Wikipedia, and they can Google it and whatever, and people go, oh, well, that's terrible, because now they don't memorize things. So teach them something else. Okay, I don't want to get into that. But again, people say, let's just stay the same. Well, that's what drove people crazy during the pandemic. They couldn't deal with uncertainty. Well, teach that to kids. Teach them about uncertainty and teach them about failure, because, we need that.
Why are people afraid?
But we were talking about something else, about the question you had before. What was the question you had before?
Oh, it was about education, about the fact that we're sort of, your argument is that we're not doing it right, and that there are people who are doing it brilliantly, like Finland. Finland. I mean, it just seems amazing what they're doing in Finland.
Yeah, and again, the reason I mention it is you can use some of those techniques. You know, it's not just, well, it's the finish. And you know, the idea is not the kids learn critical thinking. All right. So they don't know every subject by heart, but
Yeah,
they know how to argue about it because they're not ashamed to question stuff.
yeah.
And they work as a team. They sit in a circle. I thought this was, nobody sits in rows, and they'll have an argument about, I don't know, the environment, or not an argument, but they'll talk, you know, talk about it. Then they turn around to the bigger circle behind them, and their partner will say, I didn't think you were really listening. I think you were sort of interrupting them. It didn't look like you were engaging. And so their behavior, or how they listen and how they negotiate with other people, is you're learning, and you're learning about human, you know, how to be a better human. They were remarkable. I broke my back while I was there,
Yeah,
you know,
yes, I
flying
was
horse
bring that up. Yeah, you went to that school. You
there, and
had some cushions.
a man said, would I like to go riding at his stable while I was there? Because his wife's a show jumper. And I said, so am I. Never
I,
show jump.
why did you say that?
I don't know, Emma. This is from 30 years of doing mindfulness. I don't know. So I get on the horse. I fall off once, right? But I get back on it thinking, just warming up. Fall off once. The next time I'm doing this, the horse goes over and I flip, and I hear the crunch of my bones. Anyway, jump cut. The guy gives me codeine and then wraps me in a girdle. But you know, I'm one of these people. I don't give up. So the next day, I'm going to one of the schools, and I'm not getting on a plane until I do. So I called the Uber. He came over, and I said, I will give you extra money if you pack my suitcase. So he came up, he did the undies, and then he carried me down, and I was carried into the school, carried with my luggage, and put on the floor on cushions.
Hang on, I've got a question. Did he carry you in over his shoulder,
He did
or
not.
sort of like
It was
Superman with
this,
Lois Lane? Yeah,
like this. So I
yeah.
was presented to the school, and then I watched what they did. You know, I had enough coding to watch that. But even, you know, when the teacher taught the young kids about the ugly duckling, they really did go and say, well, what does the ugly duckling feel like? What could he have done? What could you know, they just analyze it in a different way. And there's recess all the time, because they know the kids can take in 20 minutes or something, and then they have to go away, and that's when the brain really starts thinking.
Just run it off like puppies. Yeah.
And start school at 7, because it's proved that if you start them at 5, it doesn't make a difference.
What puzzles me about the whole Finland thing and education is that across the board you will see people going, "Oh, Finland is doing it brilliantly. Finland is
I
getting
know.
it right." So I don't understand why we can't just go, "Oh, well, why
Well,
don't
they
we
do.
do what they do
I
in
mean,
Finland?"
there are a few schools that do that. But let me just say, in Finland, teachers are paid more than almost any other job. And when the teacher starts with the class when they're young, she stays with them for 6 years. So
Yeah.
they do form a unit, and they, you know, they love each other.
They're the blue team. They're the
And
blue
they're the
team.
blue team again.
They're the
I
blue.
mean, I tried to get a job with Patagonia, and
Yeah.
I tried to, you know, the guy who I dated, I wanted to work for B Corps.
Yeah.
And the community, I'm going to Finland next week to live there for a month. You know,
You went for a month.
a month. I
Yeah.
rented a place because I've always wanted to, you know, people always say, you should work in a garden, it'll earth you. Well, my garden is completely made of artificial flowers, totally. People come and take photographs of it. So when I got to Findhorn to research it, they threw me into a vegetable garden and said, pick the tomatoes. Well, I have OCD, so I picked them like at 200 miles an hour. But every day they made me go and then do the zucchini. So I want to know what it's like to earth yourself. Okay, I'm going to go work in their vegetable gardens.
Oh,
I'm going to figure out how those cabbages got that big.
I absolutely love that. We're now going to have some questions
Oh.
from people watching, so that's exciting. Linda Chew, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. She says, what are your thoughts on WhatsApp groups? You get added without any permission and it's very difficult to leave. Is this creating a false sense of community and a stressful obligation? That's a very good question.
That's a very good question. I don't know about you, but again, I'm in a WhatsApp group that just give accounts. There's really intellectual people. I don't want to mention their names. So I was so flattered. I was part of it. But they do reviews on what Boris said and how many people died and what, about who's like screwing who and more about China. Just big chunks that I could read in the newspaper too, but they want to show off how smart they are. There isn't one bit of, here's what's going on for me. It's just nauseating. And that's a group that just are picking the politics straw and making jokes about, where does that get you? Does it make you feel better? It's everybody's chasing their tail to get more and more angry.
Yeah,
That's my WhatsApp group. But
right.
I'm tempted to go on it because it's a group, and then I don't answer for a few days. So I look up a newspaper article, something horrifying happening in Venezuela, and I'll put it in and say, I'm disgusted at this. Because I want to put it in.
I've been put into a DM group on Twitter. It's like direct messaging on Twitter.
Oh yeah.
So you can have groups. So it's like WhatsApp, but it's DMs. And I've been in it now for over a year.
Does it mean you're important?
I mean, I don't know, but I've been in it for over a year. And I will wake up, and most of them are American, and I will wake up to like 352 messages that have been left there. I don't even read any of them. I just scroll straight through. I can't leave that group because I don't want them to think I'm an asshole for leaving. So in order to your question, Linda, I feel sometimes that with those groups and WhatsApp groups, that it's like being put into a social prison that you can't get out of. And there is a pressure, isn't it? It's like, I suppose it's that human thing of, oh no, if I leave, they'll talk about me.
Yeah, or you'll let the tribe down. Again, it's a primitive reflex, isn't it? Yeah. I got out of it by saying that I do volunteer work every night at 7:30 when they meet. This is another one, because they turned it into a dinner where we all had to go online. Okay. The horror. I hated everybody in it.
Excuse. Anyone who's watching, you can use that excuse, but don't tell anyone that that's the excuse we're using. Okay. That's for the group. That's for everyone who's okay. Everyone who's watching now is our team blue. Okay. Everyone's watching is our team blue.
I know some songs I could teach you, but
I'm sorry, I can't do that because I'm being a volunteer right now. Okay. Question from Stephanie. She says, was there a chapter that was particularly difficult for you to write, or a chapter or section that you really connected with and had a hard time editing down?
I didn't really edit it down at all, but at the end, the last chapter is Lifesavers, World Savers. So I picked 3 groups where I thought it was the real deal. And they were run by, I hate the word young people, but in their 20s, and they looked the way I looked when I was 20. They had that eagerness and excitement. So I went with a group of girls, and we went to Samos, and they kind of live there. I mean, they go back to London, and nobody ever asks them what they do, but they're in their 20s, but one of them worked at the Bosnian border, and they just tell you horror stories. So they're kind of grassroots, and they're there, and they introduced me to all the women and the women's, and they built a women's group. And there's a really pretty girls that come and tell you stories that are so horrific. But, the honor of being with these girls, and they're so thrilled to be able to build a shower or help with the sewage system, that I got the excitement too. And I also want to go back there. Yeah. I mean, I hit gold.
That bit in the book is amazing. It's really it really affected me, actually. And I know I kind of want to use the word, but I know it's just coming from me being sort of in awe that anyone wants to leave their safe life, and go and put themselves into refugee camps. But I just thought how brave of you it was. But then you think there's nothing brave about being a privileged person going into a refugee camp to sort of, help yourself feel better and do some good. Whereas the people that you met.
Yeah, they're the gold. It wasn't like I just did it because, I thought it would look good on my resume. The gold was seeing these young girls who one was a nurse and one had a database where, you know, that's what was great. They didn't have to call it a big organization, but she knew where the people who knew how to build this. She knew where there were bricklayers. She had a database so she could call in people immediately to build a, you know, a shelter or a hospital or whatever. There was a hotline, and it was thrilling to watch them. You know, I was like this old cock that didn't know what to do. As a matter of fact, one day, you know, what skill do I have? But they liked me, so I felt, you know, part of the game.
I really liked how honest you were in that section about how you really had to work hard to get Aslam to like you. Didn't you?
Man,
Really
he was not
had to
taking
work
any
hard.
crap. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's the guy there on the ground who does everything. You know, he knows how to bribe the government. He knows how to he's a wheeler dealer, and he hated me because he saw this American,
You get
and he said, "What do you want to see? What are you into?"
He thought you were a complete asshole.
Asshole. He said, "What do you want to see? You want to see, you know, like one of those, like the news is porno."
Yeah.
And I kept saying, "No, you know, I tried to." Anyway, he hated me more and more. And he said, "Just Google it. You don't have to go there." And I wouldn't take no as an answer. And I ended up staying where he was staying. And only because the girls liked me did he think, oh, well, maybe there's something with her. And gradually I broke him down. He doesn't love me, but I don't disgust him as much as I did. And I just say, I didn't know what else to do. So I met all these, you know, young girls who look beautiful. You know, I mean, one girl called Princess had purple, you know, dreadlocks, and gorgeous. And standing in front of me, and she says, "Oh, I come from," where was she? Somalia or something. And her husband was a musician and had taken videos of the police during a riot, you know, and hitting people over the head. And the police came and said, "Can we have that tape?" And he said, "I don't have it." And they shot her daughter right in front of her. And she's standing in front of me. And so they're just happy you're standing in front of them, you know, because I don't cry, but you know, you know, that thing again, you give them heat.
There was a really lovely and sort of very human moment in the story that you tell, where you were just sort of, you could really tell you were just thinking, what can I do that's a nice thing to do for them? Just a silly, nice, normal thing. And tell people what you decided to do.
I didn't know what to do. But first of all, I decided to give them an exercise class. Pilates. And then these women, you know, they were like carrying whatever. Their babies are gone. But they all got their mats.
What are you talking about?
They got their mats. They're lying on the floor. I do like a couple crunches, and I say, I know this is difficult for you. Maybe just stop at 10. These women carried their households on their heads through 80 countries. And I'm saying their sit-ups are, but you know, God bless them. Then I thought, let's give them something nice. If people get this the wrong way, I can understand why. So I said, I'm going to get all of you a manicure. So we went to a manicurist, and they spent hours picking out the colors. These women live in garbage bags, but I have photos of them, and they're gorgeous, right? Holding their fingernails, and the pleasure they got was
I know it's like
Aslam could see they were so happy.
I could sense in the book that you were a bit worried about writing this in it.
Yeah, because I'm getting somebody who's raped by their neighbor a manicure.
Yeah, but you say that you hope that you did a good thing, but I can tell you from my point of view, reading it, I think one of the things that is stripped away from people who have lost everything is any sense of normality, and that small, insignificant thing of going and getting their nails painted would have felt like normality, and just a small little moment of it's just a treat, it doesn't matter, it's just something nice for me. So I think you did do a good thing. Now this is a very interesting question from Linda Chu. She says, is sustainability a privilege? Patagonia can charge a lot of money to do this, but not everyone can afford it. Now this does come up a couple of times in your book, about how you say that that human beings, they need food, shelter, and I can't remember what the and safety.
Hierarchy of
And
needs.
if you've got those three things, then people start basically thinking up problems to beat themselves up with. And there is also a sense in your book that, you know, if you've got money and you're middle class, etc., then you've got the time to start worrying about whether polar bears have got a bit of ice to stand on. So let's talk about that, the privilege of worry.
Well, let's not use sustainability, because, as I
Yeah.
said, some of these intentional villages were in Africa, and you know, they're learning how to you know, not plow and plant things in a different way and then sell it. So, you know, how you work the soil in some countries is business. So it's not a privilege. It's A, well, it's survival, and B, they are making a business out of it. So let's not use sustainability. That's not a privilege. That's just how some people roll. You know, that's their livelihood.
Yeah. But it is expensive. It is expensive. It does make things expensive. I suppose the thing we want to work towards is I suppose what Linda is getting at is that Patagonia, the stuff that they sell, it's going to be pricier, so that only people who have got
let me just stand up for that.
To shop and make those sort of choices. I suppose that's the point.
If you have no money, don't read this book, you know, because, well, you can't, you know. So I am dealing with another strata of people. But for example, Patagonia, I mean, you can roll your eyes again, but their ad in the newspaper is, don't ever buy, when you buy one thing, they don't allow you to buy anything else from them. And if you get a tear, you send it back, they fix it and send it back to you.
Yes,
so their policy is pretty interesting. Somebody can afford a jacket, right? Once in their life, they'll repair it for the rest of your life. I mean, what can I say?
I had to read that sentence about 3 times because I couldn't believe that was true. That literally you buy something from them once and they won't let you buy it again. They
won't buy anything else. No,
yeah.
They showed me jackets in their thing that were like from 1950, and they showed me the mending over and over again. I mean, their policies are interesting. And you know, everybody gives away 10% of their salary. But you're right, to get a Patagonia thing. But here's what I don't get: really, people with no money are so suckered by businesses that they suddenly have to get, you know, track shoes, what do you call, Reeboks or whatever, that cost that kind of money. You know, there's shoppers everywhere. What?
We're just in the grip of rampant consumerism, aren't we? We can't get out of it either. It's like that's the modern mindset, isn't it?
Well, because in the old days, you could watch a TV ad and go off and get a chicken leg. Now it appears on my screen. If I say, I think I'd like to garden, believe me, the side of this thing will be filled with every garden implement on the earth. So it's hidden persuaders. So, you know, and it's almost not your fault, because they can read you more than we can read ourselves. But that's a whole other thing. You know, the hope of this is that the people that helped out during the pandemic, the nurses and the garbage collectors and whatever, you know, people that wrapped your food at the grocery store, make more money than a banker. I mean, wouldn't that be great that you'd be rewarded if you were a caregiver?
That again, during the pandemic, that there was this sense, wasn't there, that we just had all our priorities all wrong, and that the people who should be the highest paid are the people who pick up our trash, and the people who kept us all going, rather than sort of the reams of middle managers who were just able to sit at home just doing emails quietly for
consultants must go first.
Yeah. So but again, the thing I so loved about your book is how optimistic and happy it made me feel. But there is a gap between, okay, I want to get to the world that Ruby has shown us, but I want to get there now. But it's like, I don't know what's got to happen.
You have to create it. You know, I mean, I'm not saying overnight you're going to have an eco village, But, you know, intention is everything, I think. And, you know, there's bad news in this book too, but
Yeah.
out of that come these green shoots. If you want to stick with that view of the world, stick with it. I'm not there, but at least there's facts and phone numbers, where to go. Go join Choose Love. Go, you know, start your community. Here's some ideas. Here's ways to teach your kids at home.
I've
If
got
you don't want to, don't do it.
I've got another great question from Linda. I'm giving you a round of applause for your questions. Linda's been brilliant. But here's another really interesting question. She says, if we are different, should we seek out a community that looks like me, or one that is different from me? That's really interesting.
That's the problem too. You know, when you're finding a community, we're going back to the tribe of them and us. That's a big problem, especially online.
My inclination is, I think it's healthy to seek out people who don't think the same way you do. I made a conscious decision after Brexit, which just made me so angry just every day, that I was going to try and make friends with people who wanted to Brexit, and it has helped. I mean, I'm still furious with Brexit, but at least now I've got someone to shout at, I suppose. Everybody, what have you done?
Yeah.
But
you know, again, you know, one of the rules when I do Frazzled is we don't talk politics and we don't talk about the news. And now you do see, I'm not saying this is the way the world is, but I get to see it. Every color's on there. I don't know where they are from in the world. And young kids are listening to old people saying they can't get out of their house. And you see their heads going like this. I think if we can form a community in a town, you know, in a town hall where there's different ethnic groups. I mean, don't do it in Surrey. And we have the same project. You got to have a purpose. It can't just mean, oh, we're going to have some cigarettes and drinks. But if there's a purpose, I think
it's working out what your purpose is, isn't it? That's the hardest thing you can ask yourself in life, I think. What is your purpose? How can you make things better in your immediate surrounding? But we're almost finished, Ruby, so I'm just going to ask you one last question, and that is that you say in it that you wrote this book to make you feel better, and I just wondered if it did.
Well, the idea was I wanted to change my life. That was the point of the book, and that somebody would inspire me to, you know, because I always change my life a little bit because I outgrow it or something. And what more can I say? I'm going to Findhorn at the end of, I'm only going a month. But after that, I'm trying to join Holly and Molly again. That's their names. And we're going to go either to Lesbos or somewhere else. I know where to have fun. I know who I want to hang with.
Yeah, you want to hang with the nice people who want to change things.
Who are doing something and not just yapping about it.
They're not just yakking about it. Yeah, as you say. Yeah. Oh well, that's it. We've had our hour, Ruby. I've absolutely loved chatting to you, and honestly, everybody, I know we talked about some of the bad bits, but as they say, you have to talk about the burnt common before you can talk about the green shoots that are coming up. Your book is absolutely wonderful, Ruby, and I promise anyone who reads it, you will feel uplifted. And for the first time, and in my case, for the first time since 2016, I've actually felt optimistic. So thank you, Ruby. You've been amazing. Thank you, everybody who's been watching. I'm sorry if we didn't get to all of your questions, but thank you so much. And thank you to Waterstones online events
Waterstones
this evening. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Emma.